Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're embarking on a journey that might just make you want to leave the lights on tonight. We are exploring a phenomenon often referred to as the whispering darkness. It is that strange, inexplicable sensation you get when you're alone in a quiet room and you feel as though the shadows are trying to communicate. Have you ever felt it? That prickle on the back of your neck? We're going to look into why we feel this way and what might actually be hiding in the corners of our vision. It's going to be a fascinating ride, so settle in and let's get started. The story of the whispering darkness isn't just one legend. It's a collection of experiences from all over the world. From the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest to the ancient stone corridors of European castles, people describe the same thing: a low, rhythmic sound that mimics human speech, but remains just out of reach of understanding. It's not quite a voice, but it's certainly not silence. Scientists often point to infrasound, low-frequency noises that we can't consciously hear, but that our bodies react to with anxiety and dread. But for those who have experienced it firsthand, the explanation feels much more personal and much more chilling. I remember talking to a local historian who spent years researching abandoned sites. He told me that the darkness doesn't just swallow light, it holds on to memories. He described an old library where the air was so heavy it felt like walking through water. He said that if you sat still long enough, the silence would begin to crack. You'd hear what sounded like pages turning, or a soft sigh right next to your ear. He called it environmental residue. It's the idea that intense emotions or repetitive actions can leave a mark on a physical space, playing back like an old tape loop when the conditions are just right. Whether you believe in ghosts or just physics, it's a concept that really makes you think about the places we inhabit. Now, let's talk about the psychological side of this. Our brains are hardwired to find patterns. It's a survival mechanism called pareidolia. Usually, we talk about it in terms of seeing faces in clouds or burnt toast, but it applies to sound too. In a state of sensory deprivation, like a very dark, quiet room, your brain gets desperate for input. It starts amplifying background noise, turning the hum of a refrigerator or the wind in the eaves into whispers and footsteps. It's your mind trying to protect you from a vacuum of information. But knowing the science doesn't always make the experience any less terrifying when you're actually there, standing in the middle of it, wondering if your mind is playing tricks or if it's something more. To get a better sense of this, I decided to visit an area known for these occurrences. It's an old stretch of woodland that the locals avoid after sunset. They say the trees talk. As I walked through the trail, the first thing I noticed was the absolute lack of bird calls. It was eerie. Usually, nature is noisy, but here, everything was muted. I set up some high-sensitivity audio equipment to see if I could catch anything the human ear might miss. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows didn't just grow longer, they seemed to grow denser, more tactile. It was as if the woods were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. I stayed there for hours, just listening. About 2 hours into the night, the audio meters started spiking. There was no wind, no animals, but the recording software was picking up a rhythmic oscillation. When I put on my headphones, I heard it. It wasn't words, but it had the cadence of a conversation. It was a series of soft, percussive sounds, like muffled drumming or distant murmurs. It reminded me of hearing people talk through a very thick wall. I felt this sudden, overwhelming urge to just leave. It wasn't a logical fear, but a visceral one. It's that fight or flight response kicking in. I decided to stick it out a bit longer, but I can tell you, the darkness felt like it was pressing against my skin. It was one of the most intense feelings of being watched I've ever had. What's interesting is how different cultures interpret these whispers. In some traditions, they are thought to be the echoes of the ancestors, offering guidance or warnings. In others, they are seen as malevolent spirits, trying to lure the living into the void. There is a common thread, though, the idea that darkness is a threshold. It is a space where the veil between the known and the unknown is at its thinnest. Whether it's a spiritual gateway or just a trick of our biology, the whispering darkness represents our primal fear of what we cannot see. It's a reminder that despite all our technology and knowledge, there are still parts of our world that remain stubbornly mysterious and untamed. As I reviewed the footage later, I noticed something else. There were moments where the camera's autofocus would struggle, hunting for something in the empty space between the trees. It's a common technical glitch, sure, but in that context, it felt like the camera was seeing something I couldn't. It makes you wonder about the limitations of our own senses. We only see a tiny fraction of the light spectrum. We only hear a small range of frequencies. The world is full of things we aren't equipped to perceive. The whispering darkness might just be our senses catching the very edge of something that exists just beyond our reach. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? That we are surrounded by things we can't understand. I brought the audio samples to a sound engineer friend of mine. He cleaned up the noise and ran some filters. What he found was fascinating. The whispers were actually a series of resonant echoes caused by the geography of the area. The way the hills were shaped allowed sounds from miles away, a highway, a distant farm, to bounce and congregate in that specific spot in the woods. It was a natural acoustic anomaly. This explains the what, but not necessarily the why of the feeling it produces. Even knowing it was just a distant truck didn't change the fact that, in the moment, it felt like something was speaking directly to my soul. The power of the environment over our psyche is truly incredible. So, where does that leave us? Is the whispering darkness just physics and psychology, or is there something more? Personally, I think it's a bit of both. Our world is built on layers of history, science, and mystery. Sometimes they overlap in ways that we can't easily categorize. To dismiss these experiences as just anything is to miss the beauty of the unknown. These moments of fear and wonder remind us that we are part of a much larger, much stranger story. It keeps our curiosity alive. It keeps us looking into the shadows, even when we're a little bit afraid of what we might find. Because at the end of the day, it's the mysteries that make life truly interesting. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever had an experience where the silence felt loud, or where the darkness seemed to have a voice of its own? Maybe it was in an old house, or a quiet park, or even in your own bedroom at night. Let's get a conversation going in the comments. I read through all of them, and I love hearing your stories. These shared experiences are what help us make sense of the strange things in our world. Don't be shy. Sometimes just writing it down can make those shadows feel a little less intimidating. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys have to share. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of the whispering darkness. It's been a blast sharing this with you. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unexplained, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We have some even more intense investigations coming up that you won't want to miss. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. Stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, maybe keep a small light on, just in case.